Welcome to What If Sleepstorian, where What If whispers timeless tales into dreams. Breathe deeply, let your mind soften, and drift into tonight's gentle story. What if ancient manuscripts held secrets that could only be unlocked by moonlight, and a gentle librarian discovered whispers between the pages that spoke of forgotten mysteries? So dim the lights, find your most comfortable position, and let these whispered narratives carry you softly towards sleep. If this tale finds you drifting towards sleep's edge, let me know where in the world you're listening. These stories travel far on whispered winds. Give it a like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely like what I do here. In the heart of London, where gaslight flickers against cobblestones worn smooth by countless footsteps, there stands a library that time seems to have forgotten. The Thornfield Library rises from Bloomsbury's quiet streets like a cathedral of knowledge, its Gothic spires reaching towards stars that peek through London's perpetual veil of coal smoke and mist. The year is 1873, and Victoria's reign has settled over England like a comfortable shawl, bringing with it an age of discovery, propriety, and the gentle rustle of turning pages. The library's entrance, flanked by stone gargoyles whose expressions seem almost kindly in the soft gaslight, welcomes those who seek solace among books with the promise of warmth and wonder. Inside, towering shelves stretch toward vaulted ceilings, painted with constellations that seem to twinkle in the amber glow of oil lamps. The air carries the rich perfume of aged leather, vanilla-scented parchment, and that indefinable essence of stories waiting to be discovered. Waiting and waiting and waiting still. Tonight, as fog curls around the library's mullioned windows like curious fingers, and the distant chimes of Big Ben echo through London's sleeping streets, something extraordinary stirs among the manuscripts. The moonlight, filtered through stained glass windows that paint rainbow patterns across the polished wooden floors, seems to whisper secrets that only certain souls can hear. Miss Eleanor Hartwell moves through this sanctuary of knowledge with the quiet grace of one who has spent her life among books. At 32, she possesses the kind of understated beauty that Victorian society often overlooks. Intelligent grey eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, auburn hair pinned in a practical yet elegant chignon, and hands that handle ancient texts with the reverence of a priest blessing communion wine. She has served as the library's head manuscript curator for nearly a decade, a position that in 1873 represents both unusual achievement for a woman and a delightful eccentricity that London's intellectual circles have come to appreciate. Eleanor's domain lies in the library's most mysterious corner, where a spiral staircase winds upward to the manuscript room. Here, behind glass cases and protective cloth coverings, rest documents that span centuries, illuminated psalters from medieval monasteries, correspondence from long-dead poets, scientific treatises that challenge the very foundations of human understanding, and maps of lands both real and imagined. The room feels suspended between past and present, where shadows dance with history, and every breath seems to stir the dust of ages. The Victorian era has brought remarkable changes to England, transforming it from a largely agricultural society into the workshop of the world. Steam engines chuff across the countryside, connecting distant villages to bustling cities where factories hum with industrial ambition. The Great Exhibition of 1851 showed the world Britain's mechanical marvels, housed in the Crystal Palace, that magnificent greenhouse of iron and glass that still gleams in Hyde Park like a jewel dropped by giants. Yet for all this progress, for all these coal-powered achievements that fill newspapers with breathless excitement, there remains something timelessly comforting about libraries, about the quiet ritual of research, the gentle whisper of pages turning, the soft scratch of pen on paper. Eleanor understands this balance between old and new better than most. During the day, she corresponds with scholars via the expanding telegraph network, catalogues acquisitions using modern organisational methods, and even occasionally consults with the Royal Society about historical documents. But in the evening hours, when the library settles into peaceful silence and moonlight transforms familiar spaces into something magical, She allows herself to simply listen, to hear what the manuscripts might whisper when they think no one is paying attention. Tonight carries a particular enchantment. The October air outside holds that crisp promise of winter, while inside the library, the oil lamps cast their warm glow across reading tables where a few dedicated scholars still bend over their work. The sound of their gentle breathing, the soft rustle of pages, the occasional contented sigh. These create a symphony of scholarly peace that Eleanor has grown to love. She moves between the shelves like a ship navigating familiar waters, straightening volumes, checking the moisture levels that protect delicate bindings, ensuring that each precious manuscript rests in conditions that will preserve it for future generations. The manuscript room tonight seems particularly alive with possibility. Perhaps it's the way the moonlight streams through the tall windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. Perhaps it's the October wind that whispers around the building's corners, carrying with it the scent of autumn leaves and distant hearth fires. Or perhaps it's simply that Eleanor has reached that perfect state of peaceful alertness that sometimes comes in the quiet hours, when the mind becomes receptive to mysteries that daylight logic might dismiss. She approaches her current project, a collection of documents recently acquired from the estate of the late Lord Pemberton, a Victorian gentleman whose interests range from astronomy to ancient languages, from botanical illustration to what his contemporaries politely termed antiquarian curiosities. The collection includes correspondence with noted scholars, detailed observations of celestial phenomena, pressed flowers from his extensive travels, and several manuscripts written in languages that have challenged even Eleanor's considerable linguistic abilities. One document in particular has captured her attention over the past few weeks. Bound in dark blue leather that feels soft as velvet beneath her fingertips, it contains pages of text written in what appears to be a cipher, symbols that dance across the parchment like musical notes, occasionally interspersed with familiar Latin phrases and sketches of astronomical symbols. The binding itself tells a story of careful preservation. The leather shows the kind of gentle wear that suggests it was often handled, yet never carelessly. Someone treasured this book, spent countless hours studying its mysteries, perhaps even adding their own observations to its pages. Eleanor settles at her favourite reading table, positioning the manuscript so that both lamplight and moonlight illuminate its pages. She has developed a theory about this particular text, that it might be connected to the correspondence she found tucked between other documents, letters between Lord Pemberton and a mysterious correspondent identified only as MS. The letters discuss astronomical observations, mention convergences of light and shadow, and reference what they call the library's deeper mysteries. As she opens the manuscript, a loose page flutters to the table, a sheet of parchment covered in Lord Pemberton's familiar handwriting. The ink has faded to a warm brown, and the words seem to shimmer slightly in the combined glow of lamp and moon. Eleanor adjusts her spectacles and begins to read. October 15th, 1861. The manuscript responds most remarkably to moonlight, particularly during the autumn months when the veil between seasons grows thin. Tonight, the symbols seemed almost to rearrange themselves upon the page, revealing meanings that daylight reading had concealed. MS was correct. There are indeed secrets hidden within Thornfield's walls that extend far beyond our conventional understanding of its collection. The alignment she predicted has begun, and I find myself questioning whether we are merely observers of these mysteries, or somehow integral to their unfolding. Eleanor reads the passage twice, then a third time, feeling her pulse quicken with the thrill of discovery. Here is confirmation that the manuscript she's been studying held secrets that previous scholars had attempted to unlock. But what alignment? What mysteries? And who was this MS whose predictions seemed to guide Lord Pemberton's research? She turns her attention back to the cipher text, and in the combined glow of artificial and natural light, something extraordinary begins to happen. The symbols on the page, do they seem slightly different than they did this afternoon? Eleanor blinks, adjusts her spectacles again, and looks more carefully. Yes, there is definitely something. The marks appear deeper, more defined, as if the moonlight is somehow enhancing the ink itself. The Victorian mind, trained in scientific observation and rational analysis, wars briefly with the part of Eleanor that has always been drawn to mystery and wonder. But tonight, in this place where centuries of human knowledge rest in peaceful slumber, she allows curiosity to overrule skepticism. She fetches a magnifying glass from her desk drawer and examines the page more closely. Under magnification, the transformation becomes undeniable. The symbols are not merely appearing darker, they're actually changing, revealing additional marks and flourishes that were invisible in ordinary light. It's as if the manuscript contains two texts, one visible during the day, another that emerges only when moonlight touches the page. The discovery sends a delicious shiver of excitement through Eleanor's scholarly soul. She quickly retrieves a notebook and begins to transcribe what she sees, working methodically from left to right, top to bottom. The symbols form patterns that suggest linguistic structure, repeated elements that might represent common words, longer sequences that could be sentences or phrases. As she works, the soft sounds of the library seem to fade. The distant ticking of the grandfather clock, the whisper of wind against windows, even her own breathing becomes a gentle background rhythm that somehow enhances her concentration. Hours pass unnoticed as Eleanor loses herself in the work of decipherment. The Victorian era has produced remarkable advances in the study of ancient languages. Archaeologists are uncovering cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia, hieroglyphic texts from Egyptian tombs, and scholars like herself are developing new methodologies for approaching unknown scripts. But this manuscript presents unique challenges. The symbols combine familiar elements, astronomical signs that any educated Victorian would recognise, with others that seem to belong to no known system of writing. As the night deepens and her transcription grows longer, Eleanor begins to notice patterns that suggest meaning. Certain symbol combinations appear repeatedly, always in similar contexts. Others seem to serve as markers or dividers, creating what might be paragraphs or sections. And throughout the text, those familiar Latin phrases provide tantalizing clues. Luna revelate appears several times, which Eleanor translates as the moon reveals. Bibliotheca custodit might mean the library guards, or the library protects. The work is painstaking but deeply satisfying, requiring the kind of focused attention that Victorian scholars particularly prized. Each small breakthrough, recognizing a repeated symbol, identifying a possible grammatical pattern, connecting a cipher mark to its Latin equivalent, brings the quiet joy that comes from pushing back the boundaries of the unknown. Eleanor finds herself humming softly as she works, a gentle melody that seems to harmonise with the library's nighttime symphony. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, when London sleeps deeply beneath its blanket of fog, and only the most dedicated scholars and the occasional constable remain awake, Eleanor makes a discovery that stops her humming abruptly. A sequence of symbols that she's been puzzling over suddenly resolves into meaning, and the translation makes her heart skip with excitement and just a touch of delicious trepidation. When October's moon reaches its fullest brightness and shadows dance longest upon library floors, seek the rose window where coloured light meets the constellation of Perseus. There, in the marriage of earthly craft and celestial wonder, waits the first key to deeper mysteries. Eleanor sits back in her chair, removing her spectacles to rub her eyes, then replacing them to read the passage again. The rose window. She knows it well. Located on the library's second floor, it depicts the liberal arts in glorious stained glass. Figures representing grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, music and astronomy, arranged in a circular pattern around a central rose. During daylight hours, it casts beautiful coloured patterns across the reading areas below. But at night, with moonlight streaming through its panels, the effect would be quite different, especially during the full moon. She glances at the calendar on her desk. Tonight is October 13th. The full moon, she calculates quickly, will occur in just 2 days. And Perseus. She tilts her head to consider the angle of the windows, the orientation of the building. Yes, if her astronomical knowledge serves her correctly, Perseus would indeed be visible through the rose window during October nights, appearing to rise from the eastern horizon in the early evening hours. The implications of this discovery send pleasant tingles through Eleanor's scholarly sensibilities. She has stumbled upon what appears to be a treasure hunt of sorts, a puzzle designed by previous generations of scholars. Perhaps Lord Pemberton himself, working in collaboration with the mysterious MAS. But rather than feeling apprehensive about following such mysterious instructions, Eleanor finds herself delighted by the prospect. Victorian society may prize propriety and rational thought, but it also has a deep appreciation for mystery and adventure, for the romantic notion that hidden wonders might await those brave enough to seek them. She carefully closes the manuscript, wrapping it in its protective cloth, and secures it in its proper storage case. But first she makes detailed notes about her discoveries, sketching the transformed symbols and recording her translations. Whatever mystery awaits at the rose window in 2 nights' time, she wants to be properly prepared. The remainder of the night passes in contemplation and planning. Eleanor continues her regular duties, checking humidity levels, updating catalogue entries, preparing materials for tomorrow's visiting scholars. But her mind keeps returning to the manuscript's message. Who were these previous seekers? What deeper mysteries did they discover? And why did they choose to encode their findings in such an elaborate cipher, revealed only by moonlight's touch? As dawn approaches and the first hints of grey light begin to filter through London's perpetual fog, Eleanor allows herself a few moments of pure anticipation. The Victorian age has brought many wonders: telegraphs that carry messages across continents, locomotives that race across the countryside faster than the swiftest horse, gas lamps that turn night into day at the twist of a valve. But here, in this ancient library where the past and present exist in harmonious balance, she has discovered that some mysteries require nothing more than patience, moonlight, and the willingness to believe that the world still holds secrets worth discovering. She tidies her workspace, extinguishes the oil lamps, and prepares to leave the library as London awakens to another day of Victorian bustle and progress. But as she walks through the reading rooms, past the towering shelves that hold countless stories and secrets, Eleanor finds herself looking forward to the evening hours when she can return. 2 more days until the full moon, 2 more days until she can test the manuscript's mysterious instructions. The morning fog that greets her as she steps onto Bloomsbury's cobblestone streets seems less like London's perpetual grey veil, and more like a soft curtain waiting to be drawn back, revealing wonders that only the most patient and dedicated seekers will ever glimpse. Eleanor pulls her woolen shawl closer against the October chill and walks home through streets where gas lamps flicker against the growing daylight, her mind already planning her return to the library's gentle mysteries. The next day passes with unusual slowness, each hour stretching like warm honey from a spoon. Eleanor goes through her regular routines, cataloguing new acquisitions, corresponding with scholars about research requests, supervising the careful cleaning of delicate manuscripts. But her thoughts keep drifting to tomorrow night's full moon and the promise hidden in the cipher text. She finds herself glancing frequently at the rose window, studying how the daylight transforms its coloured glass into jewelled patterns on the floor below. During her lunch break, she walks to a nearby bookshop to purchase a small astronomical almanac, wanting to verify the exact timing of moonrise and Perseus's position. The shopkeeper, an elderly gentleman with ink-stained fingers and a perpetually bemused expression, seems delighted to discuss astronomical matters with someone who shares his enthusiasm for celestial mechanics. "Ah yes, Perseus," he says, adjusting his spectacles to peer at star charts. "The Hero constellation, rising in the east during autumn evenings. Quite dramatic, really. The way it seems to emerge from the horizon like a figure stepping out of shadow into light. If you're planning to observe it, tomorrow night should be perfect. Clear skies predicted, and the moon will be brilliant enough to provide excellent illumination without overwhelming the stars." Eleanor thanks him and returns to the library with her almanac, spending the afternoon's quiet hours studying Perseus's mythology and astronomical properties. The constellation represents the Greek hero who rescued Andromeda from a sea monster, who slew the Gorgon Medusa, who turned Atlas to stone with the monster's severed head. Stories of transformation, of hidden power revealed at crucial moments, of heroes who succeeded through wisdom as much as courage. The parallels to her current situation, deciphering hidden messages, preparing to unlock secrets that previous scholars have concealed, seem almost too perfect to be coincidental. That evening, as she prepares to leave the library, Eleanor takes one more careful look at the rose window. Tomorrow night, when Perseus rises and the full moon illuminates its coloured panels, she will discover whether her translation was correct, whether the manuscript's promise of deeper mysteries will prove to be more than elaborate fantasy. The anticipation thrums through her like the gentle vibration of a harp string touched by an unseen hand. The night of the full moon arrives, with a kind of crystalline clarity that sometimes graces London, despite its reputation for perpetual fog. Eleanor returns to the library after dinner, her heart beating with excitement that she struggles to contain behind her usual professional demeanour. The evening staff nods their familiar greetings as she passes, accustomed to her habit of working late among the manuscripts. None of them guess that tonight she carries purposes beyond simple scholarly research. She makes her way to the second floor, where the rose window faces eastward toward the rising moon. The library at night takes on a different character than its daytime personality. Shadows stretch longer between the shelves. Lamplight creates pools of warm yellow glow surrounded by mysterious darkness, and every sound, the soft whisper of pages, the distant ticking of clocks, the gentle settling of old wood, seems magnified and somehow more significant. Eleanor positions herself near the rose window, just as Perseus begins to rise above London's rooftops. The constellation appears exactly as her almanac predicted, its stars forming the outline of a figure that seems to step forth from the darkness beyond the city's glowing horizon. And then, as the full moon clears the neighbouring buildings and its light streams through the stained glass panels, the rose window transforms into something magical. Coloured light dances across the floor in patterns that shift and change as clouds drift across the moon's face. The figures depicted in glass, grammar with her tablets, logic with her scales, rhetoric with her gestures of persuasion, arithmetic counting on her fingers, geometry with her compass and square, music with her celestial harmony, and astronomy reaching toward the stars, seem almost to move in the flickering interplay of moonlight and shadow. Eleanor watches, hardly daring to breathe, as the light patterns shift across the floor. For long minutes, nothing happens beyond the simple beauty of moonlight through coloured glass. Then, just as she begins to wonder if her translation was incorrect, if the manuscript's promise was merely poetic metaphor, the light from the astronomical figure in the window, astronomy herself reaching toward painted stars, falls directly upon a specific section of the floor. There where coloured moonlight meets polished wood, Eleanor notices something she's never seen before despite years of walking past this spot countless times. Set into the floorboards so subtly that only direct illumination reveals them, are symbols. The same symbols that appear in the manuscript, the same cipher that required moonlight to become visible. The floor itself has been modified, the wood carefully carved and filled with material that reflects light differently than the surrounding boards. Eleanor kneels beside the hidden message, her pulse quickening with the thrill of discovery. The symbols form a pattern that spirals outward from a central point, creating what might be a map or diagram. She traces the markings with her fingertip, feeling slight depressions in the wood that confirm her eye's testimony. Someone, long ago, went to considerable trouble to embed this secret message in the library's very structure. Using the cipher key she has developed from her manuscript studies, Eleanor begins to translate the floor symbols. The work is challenging in the shifting moonlight, requiring her to move carefully as clouds pass across the moon's face and the illumination changes. But gradually the message reveals itself. The rose remembers what the mind forgets. Beneath the seventh star of learning's crown, where wisdom's tools rest in ordered sleep, The second key awaits those who understand that some knowledge must be earned through patience, not seized through haste. Eleanor sits back on her heels, considering this new riddle. The rose window depicts 7 liberal arts, the traditional curriculum that has educated scholars for centuries. The 7th star might refer to astronomy, the figure whose light revealed the floor message. But wisdom's tools rest in ordered sleep. What could that mean? She stands and studies the window more carefully, noting how the moonlight continues to play across its panels. Astronomy, positioned at the top of the circular arrangement, holds instruments, an astrolabe, a celestial sphere, a scroll covered with calculations. The figure seems to be reaching not just toward the painted stars within the window, but toward the actual constellation of Perseus visible beyond the glass. Wisdom's tools, could this refer to actual astronomical instruments? Eleanor's mind races through her knowledge of the library's collection. In the basement storage areas, she recalls seeing cases of scientific instruments, telescopes, astrolabes, armillary spheres, and other devices used by scholars of previous generations. These would indeed be resting in ordered sleep, carefully preserved but no longer in active use. The translation mentioned beneath the 7th star, which might be literal rather than metaphorical. If she interprets this correctly, the next clue lies directly below the astronomy figure, in the basement storage areas where old instruments wait in darkness for someone to remember their purpose. Eleanor glances at the grandfather clock in the corner. Past midnight now, the library settled into its deepest quiet. The night guards make their rounds on a predictable schedule, checking each floor every 2 hours. She has perhaps 90 minutes before the next patrol reaches this area. Enough time, she hopes, to explore the basement storage and see whether her interpretation proves correct. She makes her way carefully through the darkened library, carrying a small hand lamp to light her path. The basement stairs creak softly under her feet, a sound that seems amplified in the nighttime silence. Below, the storage areas stretch in a maze of corridors lined with cases, cabinets, and carefully labelled shelves. The air smells of old leather, wood preservative, and that indefinable mustiness that accompanies items kept in careful storage for decades. Eleanor has visited these storage areas many times during her years at the library, but always with specific purposes: retrieving requested documents, checking on preservation conditions, updating inventory records. Tonight, she sees the space through different eyes, looking for connections between the rose window's message and the treasures that rest here in ordered darkness. The scientific instrument collection occupies a series of cases near the eastern wall. Appropriate positioning, Eleanor realises, since this places them directly beneath the rose window 2 floors above. The cases contain remarkable specimens of human ingenuity, astrolabes of breathtaking complexity, telescopes that once revealed Jupiter's moons to wandering eyes, armillary spheres that model the motion of celestial bodies, and dozens of smaller instruments whose purposes speak to humanity's persistent desire to measure, understand, and predict the cosmos. Eleanor moves systematically through the collection, examining each case by lamplight. Most contain multiple instruments arranged for optimal preservation and display, but one case, positioned at the very centre of the collection, holds a single item, an astrolabe of unusual design and extraordinary beauty. The brass gleams gold in her lamp's glow, and the engraved markings show a level of craftsmanship that suggests it was created by a master artisan for someone of considerable importance. As she peers more closely at the astrolabe, Eleanor notices something that makes her breath catch. Around the instrument's outer edge, instead of the usual astronomical markings, someone has engraved the same cipher symbols that appear in the manuscript and on the library floor. The astrolabe is not merely a scientific instrument. It is another piece of the puzzle, another step in the mystery that previous scholars have carefully constructed. The case is locked, but Eleanor remembers seeing the keys in the chief librarian's office. As head of manuscript curation, she has access to most areas of the library, including storage areas where valuable items require additional security. The walk back through the darkened corridors gives her time to consider the implications of what she's discovering. Someone, or more likely several someones working across multiple generations, has embedded an elaborate treasure hunt within the library itself. They have modified floors, commissioned specialised instruments, created cipher manuscripts, and carefully coordinated their efforts to ensure that only dedicated scholars with both linguistic skills and astronomical knowledge could follow the trail. The complexity and scope of the project suggest considerable resources and planning. This is not the work of a single eccentric nobleman, but rather a carefully organised group of individuals united by some common purpose. Eleanor retrieves the keys and returns to the basement, her mind churning with questions and possibilities. Who were these mysterious scholars? What knowledge were they trying to preserve or protect? And why choose such an elaborate method of concealment rather than simply writing down their discoveries in conventional form? The astrolabe case opens with a soft click, and Eleanor carefully lifts the instrument from its velvet-lined resting place. It is heavier than she expected, suggesting solid construction rather than merely decorative appearance. The brass feels warm beneath her fingers, and the engraved cipher symbols seem to catch and reflect her lamplight in intriguing ways. She carries the astrolabe to a nearby work table and begins to examine it systematically. The instrument follows the traditional astrolabe design, a circular body with a rotating overlay that allows users to model celestial motions for any date and location. But the cipher symbols replace the usual star maps and calendar markings, creating what amounts to a three-dimensional puzzle. As Eleanor rotates the astrolabe's components, aligning different symbol combinations, she begins to understand how it functions as both a scientific instrument and cipher device. Certain alignments cause the symbols to form recognizable patterns, not astronomical calculations, but linguistic messages written in the same code she's been studying. The astrolabe serves as a mechanical cipher wheel, allowing users to encode and decode messages using astronomical principles as the key. Working carefully by lamplight, Eleanor experiments with different alignments, looking for combinations that produce meaningful text. The process requires both astronomical knowledge, understanding how to set the astrolabe for specific dates and celestial positions, and linguistic skill in working with the cipher system. After nearly an hour of careful manipulation, she discovers an alignment that produces clear text. The third key rests where morning light first touches ancient wisdom, where the earlier scholars sought to capture starlight in written form. When the sun and moon share the sky at autumn's peak, and Perseus stands guard over London's dreams, look to the place where illuminated letters hold their secret counsel. Eleanor reads the message twice, then sits back to consider its implications. This new riddle seems to reference illuminated manuscripts, the decorative texts created by medieval scribes who captured starlight in written form through gold leaf and brilliant pigments. The library's collection includes several remarkable illuminated manuscripts, housed in a special climate-controlled room on the third floor. But the timing reference puzzles her initially. When sun and moon share the sky, this would occur during daylight hours when the moon remains visible, most commonly in the morning hours after a full moon night. Tomorrow morning, perhaps, if atmospheric conditions permit both celestial bodies to be visible simultaneously. She carefully returns the astrolabe to its case, locks the storage area, and makes her way back through the darkened library. The night's discoveries have opened new questions while answering others, and Eleanor finds herself caught between exhaustion and excitement. The systematic revelation of clues suggests that tomorrow will bring another piece of the puzzle, another step toward understanding what previous generations of scholars worked so carefully to preserve and protect. As she prepares to leave the library, Eleanor pauses at the rose window one final time. Perseus still shines through the coloured glass, and the moon's light continues to dance across the floor in patterns that seem almost alive. She has become part of something larger than simple scholarly research, a tradition of discovery that spans generations, connecting her to minds and hearts that shared her passion for mystery and knowledge. The walk home through London's fog-shrouded streets feels different tonight. Every shadow might conceal secrets. Every building might hold clues to mysteries she has yet to imagine. the Victorian world around her, the gas lamps and cobblestones, the horse-drawn carriages and smoking chimneys, no longer seems merely familiar, but rather like a stage set for adventures that most of her contemporaries will never suspect exist. Tomorrow morning, she will return to discover what secrets the illuminated manuscripts might reveal when observed under the specific conditions described by the astrolabe's message. Tonight, she will dream of cipher symbols dancing in moonlight, of astronomical instruments that encode linguistic mysteries, of scholars whose dedication to knowledge led them to embed puzzles in the very structure of their beloved library. The mystery deepens, and Eleanor finds herself grateful to be part of its unfolding. In an age of steam and telegraph, of mechanical precision and industrial efficiency, she has discovered that some treasures still require patience, wisdom, and the willingness to believe that the most valuable knowledge might be hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with eyes to see and hearts to understand. Sleep comes slowly, filled with dreams of spinning astrolabes and coloured light dancing through ancient halls, where the whispers of past scholars seem to echo like gentle lullabies, promising that tomorrow will bring new wonders to those brave enough to seek them. Dawn arrives with unusual clarity over London, the October sky painted in shades of pearl and rose that seem to promise revelation. Eleanor wakes earlier than usual, her dreams having been filled with spinning astrolabes and cipher symbols that dance like living things across moonlit pages. The anticipation of continuing her mysterious quest thrums through her veins like the gentle vibration of a tuning fork, making her usual morning routine. Tea, toast, and a careful review of the day's planned activities feel both familiar and somehow transformed by the knowledge of hidden purposes. She arrives at the library as the morning fog begins to lift, revealing a city awakening to its daily rhythms of commerce and industry. The streets bustle with vendors calling their wares, horses clopping over cobblestones, and the distant whistle of steam trains carrying passengers to destinations both mundane and magnificent. But Eleanor's attention focuses upward, scanning the lightening sky for signs that the astrolabe's message might prove prophetic. There, hanging like a pale ghost against the dawn sky, the moon maintains its vigil despite the growing daylight. And in the east, the sun climbs steadily toward its daily appointment with illumination and warmth. The conditions described in the cipher message, sun and moon sharing the sky at autumn's peak, appear to be aligning exactly as the mysterious scholars predicted. Eleanor enters the library with her usual professional composure, greeting colleagues and settling into her morning duties with practiced efficiency. But beneath her calm exterior, excitement builds like steam in a kettle, approaching the boiling point. The illuminated manuscript collection awaits her attention, and she has perhaps 2 hours before the morning light reaches the optimal angle described in the astrolabe's cryptic instructions. The illuminated manuscript room occupies a special place within the library's architectural hierarchy. Positioned on the 3rd floor where natural light streams through carefully designed windows, while protective measures shield the precious documents from damaging effects of direct sunlight, the room houses treasures that represent centuries of human artistic and spiritual achievement. Books of hours decorated with gold leaf and brilliant pigments, psalters illustrated with fantastic beasts and flowering vines, chronicles that record the deeds of kings and saints in letters that seem to glow with inner fire. Eleanor has spent countless hours in this room throughout her career, studying the techniques of medieval scribes, cataloguing the symbolic content of decorative borders, corresponding with scholars who share her appreciation for these remarkable artifacts. But today, as she unlocks the room and steps into its climate-controlled atmosphere, she sees the collection through new eyes, searching for connections to the mystery that has captured her imagination and transformed her understanding of the library's hidden depths. The morning light filtered through windows designed to provide optimal illumination while protecting delicate pigments fills the room with a soft golden glow that seems to make the manuscripts themselves luminous. Eleanor moves systematically through the collection, examining each display case for signs that previous scholars might have embedded additional clues among these treasures of medieval artistry. She pauses before a particularly magnificent psalter, created in the 14th century for a wealthy patron whose identity has been lost to time. The manuscript lies open to a page depicting the constellation Perseus, rendered in gold and lapis lazuli, with an attention to astronomical detail that suggests the artist possessed genuine knowledge of celestial mechanics. Around the constellation, decorative borders contain the usual medieval menagerie: griffins and unicorns, flowering vines and geometric patterns. But Eleanor notices something that makes her pulse quicken with recognition. Hidden among the decorative elements, so subtly integrated that only careful examination reveals their presence, are symbols from the cipher system she's been studying. They appear as minor flourishes in the illuminated letters, as details in the astronomical instruments depicted alongside Perseus, as patterns in the background that seem merely decorative unless viewed with knowledge of their true significance. Eleanor examines the manuscript more closely, using a magnifying glass to study the minute details of the illumination. The cipher symbols form messages embedded within the artistic design, creating what amounts to a secret text overlaying the visible content. The medieval scribes who created this masterpiece were not merely copying astronomical and religious texts. They were preserving knowledge in a form that would survive centuries while remaining invisible to casual observers. As the morning sun climbs higher, and its light shifts to illuminate different portions of the manuscript, Eleanor begins to understand the timing reference in the astrolabe's message. The cipher symbols become most visible when viewed under specific lighting conditions: the golden morning light that occurs when sun and moon share the sky, creating an optical effect that reveals details hidden under other forms of illumination. Working systematically, Eleanor translates hidden messages embedded in the illuminated borders. The text speaks of guardians of ancient wisdom, who preserve knowledge for future seekers, of libraries within libraries, where truth rests safely beyond the reach of those who would misuse understanding. The content suggests a tradition of scholar guardians who have worked across centuries to protect certain knowledge from misuse, while ensuring its preservation for worthy successors. One passage particularly captures Eleanor's attention. When the seeker has proven dedication through patience and wisdom through understanding, when the stars align in proper conjunction and the moon grants her blessing to earthly pursuits, then shall the final key be revealed. Seek the place where knowledge first touched this sacred ground, where the earliest builders laid foundation stones blessed by ancient rituals. There, in the marriage of earth and sky, of human craft and divine inspiration, the greatest secrets wait for those whose hearts prove worthy of their trust. Eleanor sits back in her chair, the magnitude of this discovery washing over her like gentle waves against a peaceful shore. She has uncovered not merely a treasure hunt or scholarly puzzle, but evidence of a centuries-spanning tradition of knowledge preservation that transforms her understanding of the library's true purpose and history. The building she has worked in for nearly a decade is not simply a repository of books and manuscripts, but rather a carefully designed temple to learning where each architectural element might serve multiple purposes, both practical and mystical. The reference to where knowledge first touched this sacred ground intrigues her particularly. Every building has a foundation, but the phrase suggests something more significant, a cornerstone ceremony perhaps, or the placement of a foundation stone with special meaning. Eleanor's knowledge of the library's history tells her that construction began in 1847, during the height of Victorian enthusiasm for both architectural grandeur and mystical societies. The builders might indeed have incorporated symbolic elements that serve purposes beyond mere structural necessity. She carefully photographs the illuminated manuscript pages with her new portable camera, a marvel of modern technology that allows scholars to preserve detailed records without risking damage to precious documents. The cipher symbols embedded in the medieval artwork represent a remarkable fusion of artistic beauty and hidden meaning, demonstrating the sophisticated methods these scholar guardians employed to preserve their secrets across centuries. As the morning progresses and the lighting conditions change, Eleanor continues her examination of other illuminated manuscripts in the collection. Each reveals additional cipher elements, creating what amounts to a distributed message spread across multiple documents and historical periods. The scope and complexity of the system amazes her. Generations of scholars, scribes, and artisans working in coordinated secrecy to embed knowledge within the library's very foundations. The translation work proves challenging, but deeply rewarding. Each decoded passage adds pieces to a larger picture of a scholarly society dedicated to preserving knowledge that they believed too dangerous or too sacred to be widely known. They speak of stellar influences on human consciousness, of mathematical relationships that govern both celestial motions and human destiny, of ancient wisdom traditions that predate recorded history but continue to influence human development. The content sounds fantastical to Eleanor's Victorian sensibilities, trained as they are in scientific rationalism and empirical observation. Yet the sophistication of the preservation methods, the astronomical accuracy of the timing mechanisms, and the linguistic complexity of the cipher systems suggest that whatever knowledge these scholars sought to protect, they approach their task with rigorous intellectual discipline rather than mere superstitious fancy. Around noon, as autumn sunlight streams through the manuscript room's carefully designed windows, Eleanor makes a discovery that shifts her understanding of the entire mystery. Hidden within the decorative border of a 15th century astronomical treatise, she finds a detailed architectural diagram, a cross-section view of the Thornfield Library that shows not only the familiar floors and rooms she knows, but also additional spaces that do not appear on any official building plans. The diagram reveals a complex system of hidden passages, concealed chambers, and underground rooms that transform the library from a simple repository into an elaborate three-dimensional puzzle. Most intriguingly, the diagram shows a circular chamber directly beneath the building's centre, positioned at the exact foundation point mentioned in the illuminated text. The chamber appears to be accessible through a series of passages that begin in various parts of the building, converging like spokes of a wheel toward this central hub. Eleanor studies the architectural diagram with growing excitement and wonder. If accurate, it suggests that the library's true secrets lie not in books or manuscripts, but in physical spaces designed for purposes that the building's official records never mention. The Victorian era has produced remarkable advances in construction techniques, allowing builders to create complex internal structures while maintaining elegant external appearances. A building constructed by individuals with both architectural expertise and mystical purposes might indeed contain hidden spaces that serve ceremonial or protective functions. The diagram includes notations in the same cipher system, providing what appear to be access instructions and descriptions of the hidden area's purposes. Eleanor begins translating these architectural notes, working carefully to ensure accuracy in what might prove to be crucial navigation information. The central chamber serves as the heart of the sacred library, where knowledge distilled from centuries of seeking finds its final preservation. Access requires the proper alignment of earthly position and celestial influence, the convergence of intellectual preparation and spiritual readiness. The seeker must approach from the foundation point where the first stone was blessed, following the spiral path that mirrors the motion of stars around their celestial pole. The instructions continue with specific directional information, describing a route that begins in the library's basement and follows a path marked by astronomical symbols carved into the building's structural elements. The route appears to spiral gradually downward, creating a three-dimensional mandala that guides seekers through a process of symbolic descent toward the chamber where the greatest mysteries await revelation. Eleanor realizes that her morning's work in the illuminated manuscripts has provided not just clues, but actual instructions for the final stage of her mysterious quest. The scholar guardians who created this elaborate system have anticipated her progress, providing detailed guidance for those who prove capable of following their trail to its ultimate destination. She spends the remainder of the afternoon in careful preparation, studying the architectural diagram until she can visualize the hidden passages with perfect clarity. reviewing her translations to ensure complete understanding of the access requirements and gathering the materials she will need for exploration of spaces that have remained hidden for decades or perhaps centuries. The Victorian mind appreciates thorough preparation, and Eleanor approaches this adventure with the same methodical care she would bring to any scholarly project. She packs a small satchel with essential supplies, a reliable hand lamp, extra matches, paper and pencils for recording discoveries, a small mirror for reflecting light into dark corners, and a compass for maintaining orientation in unfamiliar spaces. As evening approaches and the library settles into its familiar nighttime rhythm, Eleanor feels the pleasant tension of anticipation mixed with the deeper satisfaction of intellectual achievement. She has successfully decoded a mystery that spans centuries, demonstrated the linguistic and astronomical knowledge necessary to follow clues embedded in multiple media, and proven herself worthy of the trust that previous scholars placed in future seekers. The transition from day to night in the library creates its own gentle magic, as gaslight supplements fading daylight and shadows stretch longer between the towering shelves. The familiar sounds of evening, the soft whisper of pages turning, the distant ticking of clocks, the occasional creak of old wood settling into nighttime configurations, seem tonight to carry additional meaning, as if the building itself anticipates the revelation of secrets it has kept hidden for generations. Eleanor makes her way to the basement, following the route indicated in the architectural diagram. The foundation area of the library extends further than she had previously realised, with storage rooms and mechanical spaces that serve the building's heating and ventilation systems. But according to the diagram, one particular corridor leads to passages that the building's official plans never acknowledged. She locates the starting point described in the Illuminated manuscript, a section of basement wall where the foundation stone shows signs of special treatment. Unlike the surrounding masonry, these stones bear carved symbols that match the astronomical markers mentioned in her translations. The symbols appear to be decorative elements to casual observation, but Eleanor recognises them as navigation markers for those who understand their significance. Following the diagram's instructions, she examines the carved symbols more closely, looking for the specific astronomical alignment that will reveal the entrance to the hidden passages. The symbols represent constellations positioned as they would appear during the autumn months, with Perseus prominently featured among the stellar patterns. Eleanor realises that the entrance mechanism requires not just knowledge of the symbols' meaning, but understanding of their proper sequence based on astronomical observation. She arranges herself before the wall, visualising the night sky as it appears above London during October evenings. Perseus rises in the east, followed by other autumn constellations in their predictable progression across the celestial sphere. Using this astronomical knowledge as her guide, Eleanor presses the carved symbols in the sequence that mirrors the star's nightly journey across the sky. At first, nothing happens, and Eleanor wonders if her translation contained errors or if the mechanism has failed after decades of disuse. Then, with a soft, grinding sound that speaks of careful engineering and precise craftsmanship, a section of the wall pivots inward, revealing a narrow passage that extends beyond the reach of her lamplight. The entrance to the hidden passages appears exactly as the architectural diagram predicted, confirming the accuracy of the information preserved in the Illuminated manuscripts. Eleanor pauses at the threshold, feeling the significance of this moment. She's about to enter spaces that were designed for purposes her Victorian world would consider impossible, following in the footsteps of scholars whose dedication to preserving knowledge led them to embed mysteries in stone and starlight. The passage beyond the entrance slopes gently downward, its walls lined with smooth stone that shows evidence of careful construction and regular maintenance despite its hidden nature. As Eleanor proceeds, her lamplight reveals additional astronomical symbols carved into the walls at regular intervals, providing both navigation assistance and confirmation that she follows the correct path toward the central chamber. The air in the passage carries a different quality than the library's familiar atmosphere, cleaner somehow, with a subtle freshness that suggests ventilation systems designed to maintain optimal conditions for whatever purposes these hidden spaces serve. The temperature remains comfortably constant, neither the damp chill of typical underground areas nor the stuffiness of poorly ventilated spaces. As she follows the spiral path described in the architectural diagram, Eleanor notices that the passage walls contain alcoves fitted with what appear to be oil lamps, their reservoirs filled and ready for lighting. Someone has maintained these hidden areas in perfect readiness, suggesting that the Scholar Guardian's tradition continues into the present era. The realization sends a pleasant thrill through Eleanor's scholarly sensibilities. She's not simply exploring ancient mysteries, but potentially joining a living tradition of knowledge preservation. The passage spirals gradually downward for what Eleanor estimates to be approximately 100 feet, creating a three-dimensional representation of celestial motion that transforms the simple act of walking into a symbolic journey through cosmic space. The mathematical precision of the construction impresses her Victorian appreciation for engineering excellence, while the mystical symbolism appeals to the part of her nature that has always been drawn to mystery and wonder. As she rounds the final curve of the spiral passage, Eleanor's lamplight illuminates an entrance unlike anything she's seen in conventional architecture. The doorway appears to be carved from a single piece of stone, its surface covered with astronomical symbols and ciphertext that seem to shift and dance in the flickering light. The door stands slightly ajar, as if waiting for her arrival, and beyond it lies a chamber that glows with soft, steady light from sources she cannot identify. Eleanor pauses at this threshold, understanding that she stands at the culmination of her mysterious quest, about to enter a space that represents the ultimate achievement of the Scholar Guardians, who have guided her journey through their elaborate system of clues and challenges. Whatever secrets this chamber contains, whatever knowledge the previous generations of seekers worked so carefully to preserve, she's about to discover truths that will transform her understanding of the library, the scholarly tradition she serves, and perhaps the very nature of human knowledge itself. She steps through the doorway into a circular chamber that exceeds her wildest expectations for both beauty and significance. The room appears to be carved from living rock, its walls forming a perfect sphere that creates the sensation of standing within a giant geode. But instead of crystals, the walls are lined with books, thousands upon thousands of volumes arranged in spiral patterns that seem to follow the same astronomical principles she has been studying. The lighting comes from sources she cannot immediately identify, not oil lamps or gas fixtures, but rather a gentle luminescence that seems to emanate from the walls themselves, creating an environment perfectly suited for reading and study without the harsh glare of artificial illumination. The air carries the familiar scent of aged paper and leather bindings, but enhanced with subtle fragrances of sandalwood and myrrh that speak of ceremonial purposes and sacred intentions. At the chamber's centre stands a circular table of polished wood, surrounded by chairs that suggest this space serves as a meeting place for scholarly gatherings. Upon the table rest several open books, their pages covered with the cipher symbols Eleanor has learned to recognise, alongside astronomical instruments of extraordinary beauty and precision. Everything in the chamber speaks of active use rather than historical preservation. This is not a museum of past achievements, but rather a working library designed for ongoing scholarly pursuits. Eleanor approaches the central table, her lamplight supplementing the chamber's mysterious illumination, and examines the open books with growing amazement. These volumes contain the culmination of the knowledge she has been seeking: detailed explanations of the cipher system, comprehensive astronomical calculations that predict celestial influences with remarkable accuracy, and descriptions of research methodologies that blend scientific observation with mystical insight in ways that challenge conventional Victorian understanding. One book in particular captures her attention, a leather-bound journal filled with handwriting she recognises from the correspondence in Lord Pemberton's collection. Here are the detailed records of the mysterious MS, revealing her to be Margaret Sinclair, a scholar whose astronomical observations and theoretical insights rival those of any Royal Society member, despite the social restrictions that prevented women from receiving official recognition for their scientific achievements. Margaret's journal describes decades of research into what she terms stellar influences on human consciousness, documenting correlations between celestial events and patterns of human intellectual development that suggest connections between cosmic rhythms and earthly learning. Her observations extend far beyond simple astrology, presenting a sophisticated theoretical framework that treats the universe as an interconnected system, where astronomical phenomena influence the flow of knowledge and understanding across human societies. The journal entries reveal Margaret as the guiding spirit behind the Scholar Guardian's preservation efforts, a brilliant mind who recognised that certain knowledge required protection from those who might misuse understanding for purposes of power rather than wisdom. She coordinated the efforts to embed protective mechanisms within the library's structure, supervised the creation of the cipher systems, and established the criteria for determining which seekers prove worthy of accessing the hidden knowledge. As Eleanor reads Margaret's detailed explanations of the research methodologies and theoretical frameworks that guide the Scholar Guardian's work, she begins to understand the true scope and significance of what she has discovered. This chamber represents not merely a repository of hidden books, but rather the headquarters of a scientific research program that has operated in secret for decades, pursuing lines of inquiry that mainstream Victorian science would dismiss as impossible or heretical. The research documented in these hidden volumes suggests that human consciousness operates according to principles that mirror astronomical phenomena, that learning and understanding follow cycles that correspond to celestial rhythms, and that libraries and other centres of knowledge can be designed to enhance these natural connections between cosmic order and human intellectual development. The implications for education, for scholarship, for the very foundations of human knowledge acquisition stagger Eleanor's Victorian sensibilities, while simultaneously appealing to the part of her mind that has always sensed deeper patterns underlying apparent randomness. She settles into one of the chairs surrounding the central table and begins to read systematically through the accumulated research, finding herself drawn into a world of investigation that combines rigorous scientific methodology with insights that stretch the boundaries of conventional understanding. The Scholar Guardians have not been preserving ancient superstitions, but rather conducting cutting-edge research into the fundamental nature of human consciousness and its relationship to cosmic forces. Hours pass unnoticed as Eleanor immerses herself in studies that reveal the library's true purpose, not simply to store and preserve existing knowledge, but to serve as a research facility, designed to enhance human understanding through optimal alignment with natural rhythms and celestial influences. The building's architecture, the positioning of reading rooms and study areas, even the selection and arrangement of the book collection, have been carefully calculated to create an environment that supports enhanced learning and intellectual development. As she reads, Eleanor begins to understand her own role in the continuing tradition of Scholar Guardians. Her linguistic abilities, her astronomical knowledge, her patient dedication to scholarly pursuits, and her intuitive attraction to mystery and wonder have all contributed to her successful navigation of the tests and challenges that the previous generation designed to identify worthy successors. The final entry in Margaret Sinclair's journal, dated just 3 months before her death in 1872, speaks directly to future seekers who might discover the hidden chamber. To you who have proven worthy through patience and wisdom, through dedication to learning and respect for the sacred nature of knowledge, I entrust the continuation of our work. The mysteries we have preserved represent humanity's highest achievements in understanding the connections between earthly consciousness and cosmic order. Use this knowledge wisely, share it carefully with those who prove themselves ready for such understanding, and remember always that true wisdom lies not in the accumulation of facts, but in the recognition of the divine patterns that unite all existence in harmonious purpose. Eleanor closes the journal and sits quietly in the chamber's gentle luminescence, feeling the weight of responsibility and the joy of discovery in equal measure. She has become part of something far greater than she could have imagined when she first noticed the moonlight-revealed symbols in Lord Pemberton's manuscript. She has joined a tradition of scholar guardians whose work continues the highest aspirations of human intellectual development, pursuing understanding that serves not personal ambition, but rather the advancement of human consciousness itself. The chamber around her seems to pulse gently with accumulated wisdom, its circular walls lined with books that represent centuries of careful research and preservation. Every volume here has been selected and placed according to principles that optimize the sharing of knowledge among those who approach learning with proper reverence and dedication. Eleanor understands that she has not simply discovered a hidden library, but rather gained access to a living system designed to enhance human understanding through alignment with cosmic principles. As dawn approaches in the world above, filtering down through ventilation systems that maintain the chamber's perfect atmosphere, Eleanor begins to plan her integration into the Scholar Guardian's ongoing work. She will continue her regular duties as the library's manuscript curator, but now with a deeper understanding of the institution's true purpose and her role in supporting research that transcends conventional academic boundaries. The knowledge she has gained tonight will guide her in identifying other potential Scholar Guardians among the researchers and visitors who frequent the library, watching for those who demonstrate the patience, wisdom, and reverence for learning that mark true seekers of understanding. She will become a bridge between the hidden tradition and the public face of scholarship, ensuring that the work of previous generations continues into whatever future awaits human intellectual development. As she prepares to leave the chamber and return to the conventional world above, Eleanor takes one final look around the circular room that has transformed her understanding of knowledge, learning, and the sacred responsibilities that come with access to humanity's deepest insights. The books lining the walls seem to whisper their secrets in languages both ancient and eternal, promising years of study and discovery that will enrich not only her own understanding, but also her ability to guide others toward wisdom. The spiral passage that leads back to the library's basement feels different during her ascent. No longer a mysterious route toward unknown destinations, but rather a familiar path connecting two aspects of her scholarly life. The conventional library above, with its public reading rooms and catalogued collections, serves as the visible expression of humanity's dedication to learning. The hidden chamber below represents the deeper purposes that give meaning to such dedication, the recognition that true knowledge serves not merely practical needs, but rather the expansion of human consciousness itself. Eleanor emerges from the hidden passages as London awakens to another day of Victorian progress and prosperity. The familiar sounds of morning, horses clopping over cobblestones, vendors calling their wares, the distant whistle of steam trains, seem now to carry additional layers of meaning, as if the entire city participates in rhythms that connect earthly activities to cosmic purposes. She makes her way through the library's familiar spaces, seeing everything through new eyes that recognize the sacred geometry underlying architectural choices, the astronomical principles that guide the positioning of reading areas, and the subtle influences that make certain locations more conducive to learning and understanding than others. Every detail of the building now speaks to her of purposes that extend far beyond mere functionality, revealing a sophisticated integration of practical and mystical principles that transforms simple book storage into something approaching divine architecture. As she settles into her regular morning routine, Eleanor carries within her heart the secret knowledge that will guide her future service to the Scholar Guardian's continuing mission. She has become keeper of mysteries that connect human learning to cosmic order, guardian of wisdom that recognizes no distinction between scientific observation and spiritual insight, and bridge between the visible world of conventional scholarship and the hidden realm where humanity's highest intellectual achievements find their proper preservation and continuation. The transformation feels both dramatic and perfectly natural, as if she has not discovered entirely new knowledge, but rather awakened to understanding that has always existed within her, waiting for the proper conditions to emerge into conscious awareness. The Scholar Guardian's elaborate system of tests and challenges has served not only to protect their secrets from unworthy seekers, but also to ensure that those who gain access to hidden knowledge do so only when they have developed the wisdom necessary to use such understanding responsibly. Eleanor's journey into the library's deepest mysteries has revealed that some treasures cannot be seized through force or cleverness, but must be earned through patience, dedication, and the kind of reverent approach to learning that recognises knowledge itself as sacred. The cipher symbols that first caught her attention have led her not just to hidden books and secret chambers, but to a transformed understanding of her own place in the great cosmic dance of consciousness, an understanding that connects all seekers of wisdom across time and space. As London settles into its daily rhythms outside the library's windows, an autumn sunlight streams through stained glass to create familiar patterns of coloured light on polished floors. Eleanor begins her new life as a scholar guardian, carrying within her heart the precious secrets that previous generations have preserved for those wise enough to seek and patient enough to understand the deepest mysteries that unite human learning with the eternal patterns of the stars. So ends this gentle tale of mystery and discovery, where moonlight revealed what daylight concealed, where patience proved more valuable than haste, and where the greatest treasures waited not for those who demanded answers, but for those who earned the right to ask the proper questions. In libraries around the world, in chambers both hidden and visible, the work of scholar guardians continues, preserving wisdom for future seekers who will approach knowledge with the reverence it deserves and the understanding that some secrets reveal themselves only to hearts prepared to receive them with wonder, gratitude, and the deep peace that comes from knowing one's place in the cosmic order that connects all things in harmonious purpose. The whispers of ancient wisdom still echo through those hallowed halls, calling to dreamers and seekers, inviting them to discover that the greatest mysteries often hide in plain sight, waiting for the touch of moonlight, the patience of dedicated hearts, and the gentle courage to follow where wonder leads. And now, dear listeners, as this tale of hidden libraries and secret wisdom draws to its gentle close, I invite you to share in the comments below what stories or topics you would like me to explore next in our journey through the realms of dreams and whispered histories. Perhaps tales of forgotten gardens where time moves differently, or stories of artisans who painted with starlight, or gentle adventures in lands where books write themselves, and knowledge flows like honey from ancient trees. Your suggestions help guide these nighttime wanderings through the landscapes of imagination and wonder. In the weeks that follow her initiation into the Scholar Guardian's mysteries, Eleanor finds herself living a double life that brings both challenges and extraordinary fulfillments. By day, she continues her duties as head manuscript curator, maintaining the library's visible operations with the same meticulous care she's always provided. But her evenings now belong to deeper purposes, as she descends regularly into the hidden chamber to continue her studies of the accumulated wisdom that previous generations have preserved. The circular library beneath the building reveals new treasures with each visit. Eleanor discovers that the seemingly random arrangement of books follows principles she's only beginning to understand. Volumes positioned according to astronomical calculations that optimize their accessibility during specific celestial conditions, creating a dynamic system where different knowledge becomes available as cosmic influences shift throughout the year. Margaret Sinclair's research notes provide guidance for navigating this temporal library, explaining how lunar phases affect the visibility of certain texts, how planetary positions influence the comprehensibility of complex theoretical works, and how the changing seasons alter the chamber's capacity to support different types of scholarly investigation. Eleanor learns to plan her research according to celestial calendars, approaching different subjects when cosmic conditions favour the particular type of understanding each requires. The work proves demanding but deeply rewarding, requiring her to develop new methods of scholarship that integrate astronomical observation with linguistic analysis, mathematical calculation with intuitive insight. She begins to understand why the Scholar Guardians embedded such elaborate protective mechanisms around their knowledge. The concepts contained in the hidden library challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the relationship between human understanding and cosmic order. One particular area of research captures Eleanor's sustained attention, a collection of manuscripts dealing with what Margaret termed architectural harmonics, the science of designing buildings that enhance human intellectual capacity through alignment with natural rhythms and celestial influences. The documents describe techniques for calculating optimal proportions, positioning reading areas to take advantage of beneficial stellar influences, and selecting building materials that support the kind of consciousness expansion necessary for advanced scholarly work. Eleanor realises that the Thornfield Library itself serves as a practical demonstration of these principles, its every architectural detail calculated to create an environment that supports enhanced learning and intellectual development. The positioning of windows to capture specific qualities of light at different times of day, the proportions of reading rooms that create acoustic conditions favourable to concentration, even the selection of wood and stone that contribute subtle influences to the building's overall atmosphere, all represent applications of knowledge that mainstream Victorian science would dismiss as impossible. As she studies these architectural principles, Eleanor begins to notice their effects in her own scholarly work. Research conducted in certain areas of the library proceeds more smoothly than similar work performed elsewhere. Some reading positions seem to enhance her ability to concentrate on complex problems, while others prove better suited to creative thinking or intuitive leaps of understanding. The building itself becomes her teacher, demonstrating through direct experience the practical applications of theories that exist nowhere in conventional academic literature. Her growing expertise in these matters leads Eleanor to recognise similar principles at work in other buildings throughout London. Certain churches seem designed to enhance spiritual contemplation. Some government buildings create atmospheres that support rational decision-making, and a few private residences show evidence of construction guided by knowledge of how architectural elements influence human consciousness. She begins to suspect that the Scholar Guardian's influence extends far beyond the library, that their understanding of consciousness-enhancing design has shaped significant portions of London's architectural landscape. The discovery leads Eleanor to investigate the backgrounds of the architects and builders responsible for London's most influential structures. Her research reveals connections between many of these individuals and scholarly societies that officially focus on conventional subjects: astronomy, mathematics, natural philosophy, but whose membership lists include names she recognises from the cipher manuscripts and correspondence found in the hidden chamber. She uncovers evidence of a network of scholar guardians that extends throughout London's intellectual community, individuals who pursue conventional careers while secretly advancing research into the connections between cosmic order and human consciousness. The network includes architects who design buildings according to harmonic principles, astronomers who study stellar influences on terrestrial phenomena, mathematicians who investigate numerical relationships that govern both celestial mechanics and human psychology, and philosophers who develop theoretical frameworks for understanding consciousness as a cosmic rather than merely biological phenomenon. Eleanor's role in this hidden community gradually expands as her knowledge deepens and her contributions to the ongoing research prove valuable. She begins attending monthly gatherings in the circular chamber, meetings where current scholar guardians share their discoveries and coordinate their efforts to advance understanding while maintaining the secrecy necessary to protect their work from those who might misuse such knowledge for purposes of power rather than wisdom. The meetings follow traditions established by Margaret Sinclair and her contemporaries, combining rigorous intellectual discourse with ceremonial elements that acknowledge the sacred nature of the knowledge they preserve and develop. Participants arrive according to schedules calculated to optimize group consciousness, taking positions around the central table that reflect astronomical configurations designed to enhance collective understanding. Eleanor finds these gatherings deeply fulfilling, providing intellectual stimulation that far exceeds anything available through conventional academic channels. The discussions range across subjects that official science considers unrelated: correlations between lunar cycles and patterns of human creativity, mathematical relationships that connect architectural proportions to enhanced consciousness, astronomical observations that suggest direct influences of stellar radiation on terrestrial intellectual development. The research methodologies employed by the Scholar Guardians blend scientific rigour with approaches that mainstream Victorian academia would consider mystical or unscientific. Yet the results of their investigations consistently demonstrate practical applications that work regardless of the theoretical frameworks used to explain them. Buildings designed according to their principles enhance human intellectual capacity. Educational programs structured around their understanding of consciousness. Development produce superior learning outcomes. and individuals who apply their insights to personal development experience significant expansions of awareness and capability. Eleanor's contributions to this ongoing research focus particularly on the linguistic aspects of consciousness development, investigating how different languages and writing systems influence the types of thinking they support, how cipher systems can be designed to enhance understanding rather than merely conceal information, and how the physical act of writing itself can be used to induce altered states of consciousness that facilitate access to normally unavailable knowledge. Her work in these areas leads to practical discoveries that benefit both her secret research and her public scholarly duties. She develops techniques for reading ancient manuscripts that reveal layers of meaning invisible to conventional approaches, methods for cataloguing library materials that optimize their accessibility to researchers with different types of intellectual needs, and procedures for preserving delicate documents that extend their lifespan far beyond what standard conservation methods achieve. The integration of hidden knowledge with conventional scholarship creates a seamless enhancement of Eleanor's professional capabilities, allowing her to serve the library's public mission more effectively, while simultaneously advancing the Scholar Guardian's secret research. She becomes increasingly skilled at identifying visitors to the library who might possess the qualities necessary for eventual initiation into the deeper mysteries, watching for individuals who demonstrate the patience, wisdom, and reverence for learning that mark potential candidates for the Scholar Guardian tradition. This recruitment aspect of her new responsibilities proves particularly delicate, requiring her to assess not only intellectual capabilities, but also character traits that determine whether individuals can be trusted with knowledge that could be misused if it fell into unworthy hands. The Scholar Guardians have developed sophisticated methods for evaluating potential members, creating situations that reveal how candidates respond to mystery, how they handle partial knowledge, and whether they approach learning with the humility necessary for accessing wisdom that transcends conventional understanding. Eleanor gradually masters these assessment techniques, learning to present tantalizing hints of deeper knowledge while observing how different individuals respond to such suggestions. Some prove too impatient, demanding immediate answers rather than demonstrating willingness to earn understanding through dedicated study. Others show excessive skepticism, dismissing possibilities that challenge their existing beliefs rather than maintaining the open-mindedness necessary for investigating genuinely new knowledge. But occasionally Eleanor encounters individuals who display the rare combination of intellectual curiosity, patient dedication, and humble respect for mystery that marks potential scholar guardians. These candidates receive gradually increasing exposure to the deeper aspects of library research, participating in projects that seem to focus on conventional scholarly goals, while actually serving as tests of their readiness for greater responsibilities. One such candidate emerges during Eleanor's second year as a Scholar Guardian, Dr. James Whitmore, a young astronomer whose official research focuses on stellar spectroscopy, but whose personal interests extend to questions about the relationship between cosmic phenomena and terrestrial consciousness. His frequent visits to the library's astronomical collection provide Eleanor with opportunities to observe his work methods, assess his character, and gradually introduce him to research approaches that blend scientific observation with insights drawn from the hidden manuscripts. Dr. Whitmore's responses to these subtle tests prove promising. He demonstrates patience with complex problems that lack immediate solutions, shows respect for knowledge traditions that predate modern scientific methods, and displays the kind of intellectual humility that allows for learning from sources that conventional academia might dismiss. Most importantly, he approaches mystery with wonder rather than skepticism, viewing unexplained phenomena as invitations to expand understanding rather than problems to be solved through reductive analysis. Eleanor begins to prepare Dr. Whitmore for potential initiation into the Scholar Guardian community, following protocols established by previous generations for evaluating and training new members. The process requires careful attention to timing, introducing concepts and experiences according to schedules that optimize their comprehensibility and minimize the risk of overwhelming individuals with knowledge for which they may not yet be prepared. The preparation involves exposing candidates to increasingly sophisticated examples, of the connections between astronomical phenomena and human consciousness, providing opportunities to experiment with research methodologies that integrate scientific observation with approaches drawn from wisdom traditions and creating situations that test their commitment to using knowledge for beneficial purposes rather than personal advancement. Dr. Whitmore's progress through this preparatory curriculum proves steady and encouraging. His astronomical background provides an excellent foundation for understanding the celestial aspects of the Scholar Guardian's research, while his natural curiosity about consciousness and meaning gives him motivation for exploring the more mystical dimensions of their work. Eleanor finds herself genuinely excited about the prospect of welcoming him into the hidden community, recognizing in him the qualities that will allow the Scholar Guardian tradition to continue into future generations. The process of guiding Dr. Whitmore toward initiation also serves to deepen Eleanor's own understanding of the principles and purposes that guide the Scholar Guardian community. Teaching others requires her to articulate concepts that she had previously grasped only intuitively, forcing her to develop clearer explanations of complex relationships between cosmic order and human consciousness. The responsibility of potentially bringing a new member into the secret tradition makes her more aware of the sacred trust that previous generations have placed in her, and more committed to ensuring that such trust continues to be honoured by worthy successors. As seasons cycle through their eternal dance, and Eleanor's integration into the Scholar Guardian community deepens, she finds herself part of work that extends far beyond simple preservation of ancient knowledge. The hidden research continues to develop new understanding of consciousness-enhancing principles, to discover practical applications for insights about the relationship between cosmic order and human awareness, and to prepare for future developments in the evolution of human intellectual capacity. The Scholar Guardians view their work not as an end in itself, but as preparation for a coming age when humanity will be ready for more direct access to the knowledge they have preserved and developed in secret. Their astronomical calculations suggest approaching celestial configurations that will create conditions favourable to widespread expansion of human consciousness, making it possible for larger numbers of individuals to benefit from insights that currently require elaborate protective mechanisms to prevent misuse. Eleanor's role in preparing for this approaching transformation involves not only continuing her own research and training potential new Scholar Guardians, but also working to ensure that the knowledge preservation systems will survive whatever social and cultural changes the future may bring. This requires updating cipher systems to remain secure against new methods of cryptanalysis, adapting architectural concealment techniques to account for advancing construction technologies, and developing new methods for identifying worthy individuals in a world where traditional markers of scholarly dedication may no longer apply. The work challenges Eleanor to think beyond her Victorian present toward futures that may require very different approaches to knowledge preservation and transmission. Yet the fundamental principles that guide the Scholar Guardian tradition, patience, wisdom, reverence for learning, and commitment to using knowledge for beneficial purposes, remain constant across all the possible futures she can envision. As years pass and Eleanor's expertise in the Scholar Guardian's research deepens, she occasionally allows herself to imagine the day when the hidden knowledge can emerge from secrecy into open investigation, when the connections between cosmic order and human consciousness become subjects for public scientific research rather than private mystical exploration. The prospect both excites and humbles her, representing the ultimate fulfillment of everything the Scholar Guardian tradition has worked to achieve while simultaneously marking the end of the secret community that has shaped her life's most meaningful work. But such considerations belong to distant futures. For now, Eleanor continues her double life as public librarian and secret Scholar Guardian, finding in both roles expressions of the same fundamental dedication to advancing human understanding through patient preservation and careful transmission of knowledge. The hidden chamber beneath the library remains her sanctuary and laboratory, the place where she can explore questions that push the boundaries of conventional thought, while contributing to research that may ultimately transform humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmic order. In quiet moments, when the library settles into nighttime peace, and Eleanor descends once again into the circular chamber where books and instruments wait in their eternal readiness to share secrets with worthy seekers. She reflects on the extraordinary journey that began with simple curiosity about cipher symbols revealed by moonlight. That first night of discovery has led her into a world of ongoing mystery and continuous learning, where each answer reveals new questions and every solution opens doors to deeper mysteries. The transformation of her understanding, from conventional Victorian scholarship to participation in research that transcends the boundaries between science and mysticism, represents not an abandonment of rational thought, but rather its expansion into realms where reason and intuition work together to illuminate truths that neither could discover alone. Eleanor has learned that the highest forms of knowledge require not only intellectual rigour, but also the kind of open-hearted wonder that allows consciousness to expand beyond its familiar limitations, and so her story continues, not with dramatic conclusions, but with the gentle rhythm of ongoing discovery, the patient accumulation of wisdom that builds understanding layer by layer, season by season, year by year. In the hidden chamber where lamplight mingles with mysterious luminescence, where ancient books rest alongside cutting-edge research, where the whispers of past scholars blend with the hopes of future seekers, Eleanor pursues the Scholar Guardian path with the dedication that has always marked those who serve knowledge rather than simply using it for personal advancement. The circle of mystery remains unbroken, passed from generation to generation through hands that handle both books and starlight with equal reverence, through minds that recognize no distinction between earthly learning and cosmic wisdom, through hearts that understand that the greatest treasures are not possessed but rather shared with those who prove themselves worthy of such sacred trust. Time flows like honey through the chambers of the Thornfield Library, each day bringing new discoveries while maintaining the eternal rhythms that connect earthly scholarship to celestial wonder. Eleanor's life has settled into patterns that mirror the astronomical cycles she studies, her duties expanding and contracting like the phases of the moon, her understanding deepening like the progression of seasons through their ancient dance. The secret chamber beneath the library has become more than simply a repository of hidden knowledge. It has transformed into a living laboratory where past wisdom meets present investigation, where theories developed across centuries find practical application in research that pushes beyond the boundaries of conventional Victorian science. Eleanor's role as both curator and investigator allows her to bridge these temporal dimensions, connecting insights preserved by previous generations with questions that emerge from contemporary scholarly pursuits. Her work with Dr. Whitmore has progressed beyond simple evaluation toward genuine collaboration, their joint research producing results that exceed what either could achieve working alone. The combination of his astronomical expertise with her linguistic and historical knowledge creates new methodologies for investigating the connections between cosmic phenomena and human consciousness, approaches that integrate mathematical precision with interpretive insight in ways that illuminate previously hidden relationships. Their most recent project focuses on what they term stellar linguistics, the investigation of how different languages and writing systems reflect and reinforce the cosmic influences present when they were developed. By analysing the astronomical conditions that prevailed during crucial periods in various languages' evolution, they have begun to identify correlations between celestial patterns and linguistic structures that suggest direct influences of stellar radiation on human cognitive development. The research requires extensive calculation of historical astronomical positions, detailed analysis of linguistic evolution across multiple cultures, and careful correlation of temporal patterns that span centuries or millennia. The work proves both intellectually demanding and deeply satisfying, providing evidence for theories that the Scholar Guardians have long suspected but never been able to demonstrate with rigorous precision. Eleanor's linguistic expertise proves crucial to this investigation, her ability to work with cipher systems having prepared her for the kind of pattern recognition necessary to identify subtle correlations between astronomical and linguistic phenomena. She has developed techniques for analysing the mathematical relationships embedded in language structures, methods for recognising how celestial influences manifest in the evolution of writing systems, and approaches for predicting how future astronomical conditions might affect human communication patterns. Dr. Whitmore's contributions focus on the astronomical calculations that provide the foundation for their linguistic investigations, his knowledge of stellar mechanics allowing him to reconstruct historical celestial conditions with the precision necessary for meaningful correlation analysis. His work has revealed previously unknown cycles in cosmic radiation patterns, periodicities that correspond remarkably to major transitions in human cultural and intellectual development. Together, they have begun to construct a comprehensive model of how cosmic influences affect human consciousness development, a theoretical framework that explains not only individual learning patterns, but also the broader evolution of human intellectual capacity across historical periods. Their model suggests that humanity is approaching a significant transition period when cosmic conditions will align to create unprecedented opportunities for consciousness, expansion, and knowledge advancement. The implications of their research extend far beyond academic theory into practical applications for education, architecture, and social organization. If their conclusions prove correct, it may become possible to optimize learning environments according to astronomical principles, to design educational curricula that work with rather than against natural consciousness development cycles, and to create social institutions that support rather than hinder the expansion of human intellectual capacity. Eleanor finds herself both excited and somewhat overwhelmed by the scope of what their research suggests. The knowledge they are developing could transform every aspect of human civilization, creating possibilities for advancement that previous generations could hardly imagine. Yet the same knowledge could also be misused by those who might seek to manipulate cosmic influences for purposes of control rather than liberation, making the Scholar Guardian's traditional emphasis on secrecy and careful candidate selection more important than ever. As their research progresses, Eleanor and Dr. Whitmore encounter increasing evidence that they are not alone in pursuing these investigations. Other Scholar Guardian groups in distant cities appear to be conducting parallel research, their efforts coordinated through communication networks that operate according to the same principles of secrecy and protection that guide the London community. They discover references to corresponding research conducted by Scholar Guardians in Edinburgh, Dublin, and even distant cities like Vienna and Prague, suggesting an international network of secret scholars working toward common goals despite the political and cultural barriers that divide their surface societies. The coordination appears to follow astronomical timing, with different groups taking primary responsibility for research during periods when celestial conditions optimize their particular geographic and cultural advantages. Eleanor's role in this broader network gradually expands as her expertise becomes known to Scholar Guardians in other locations. She begins receiving encrypted correspondence from researchers who seek her linguistic insights for their own investigations, while offering in return astronomical data, architectural measurements, and theoretical perspectives that enhance the London group's understanding of global patterns in consciousness development. The international correspondence reveals that the approaching transition period they have identified appears simultaneously in research conducted by Scholar Guardian groups around the world, suggesting that the predicted changes will affect all of humanity rather than specific regions or cultures. The implications are both exciting and sobering. Eleanor and her colleagues recognize that they may be witnessing the early stages of a fundamental transformation in human evolutionary development. Their responsibility as guardians of knowledge that could influence such transformation weighs heavily on Eleanor's mind during quiet moments in the circular chamber. She studies the accumulated wisdom of previous generations, seeking guidance for decisions that could affect the future of human consciousness itself. The journals and research notes left by Margaret Sinclair and her contemporaries provide some direction, but the approaching conditions appear to be unprecedented in recorded history. Eleanor finds solace in the patient rhythms of scholarly investigation, the careful accumulation of evidence that builds understanding gradually, rather than through dramatic revelations. Each night's research adds small pieces to the larger puzzle of consciousness development. Each conversation with Dr. Whitmore refines their theoretical models. Each correspondence with distant colleagues expands their awareness of the global scope of the phenomena they study. The work requires not only intellectual rigour, but also the kind of emotional stability that allows sustained investigation of questions that challenge fundamental assumptions about human nature and potential. Eleanor draws strength from the library environment itself, the accumulated presence of centuries of scholarly dedication that fills the building with an atmosphere of patient inquiry and reverent learning. As months pass and their research deepens, Eleanor begins to sense subtle changes in the library's atmosphere that seem to reflect the cosmic transitions their calculations predict. The quality of light during certain astronomical conditions appears enhanced, creating reading conditions that facilitate unusually deep concentration and insight. The arrangement of books seems to shift slightly, volumes moving to positions where they become more accessible to researchers working on specific types of problems. Most remarkably, new manuscripts begin appearing in the collection through donations and acquisitions that seem almost too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Ancient texts provide crucial missing pieces for their theoretical models, correspondence between historical figures that confirms their hypotheses about past consciousness transitions, and scientific instruments that enable new types of measurement and calculation, all arrive at precisely the moments when Eleanor and her colleagues need them most. The pattern suggests that the Scholar Guardian tradition operates according to principles that extend beyond simple human planning and coordination. Eleanor begins to suspect that the knowledge preservation systems developed by previous generations were designed not merely to protect information, but to ensure its availability when cosmic conditions create optimal opportunities for advancement of human understanding. This possibility leads Eleanor to investigate the deeper purposes behind the elaborate concealment and revelation systems that first drew her into the Scholar Guardian community. Her research reveals that the cipher mechanisms, architectural modifications, and astronomical timing systems serve not only protective functions, but also educational ones, creating learning experiences that prepare candidates for the expanded consciousness necessary to work with advanced knowledge. The months of patient investigation required to decode the manuscripts, the astronomical observations necessary to access hidden chambers, the linguistic analysis needed to interpret complex symbol systems, all serve as training exercises that develop the mental capacities and character traits necessary for responsible participation in research that transcends conventional academic boundaries. Eleanor realizes that her own transformation from conventional manuscript curator to secret scholar guardian followed a carefully designed curriculum that prepared her gradually for responsibilities she could never have anticipated when she first noticed those moonlight-revealed symbols. Every challenge she encountered, every puzzle she solved, every revelation she experienced contributed to developing the specific combination of skills, knowledge, and wisdom necessary for her current role. The recognition deepens her appreciation for the sophistication and foresight of the scholar guardians who designed these educational systems. They understood that advanced knowledge requires not only intellectual capacity, but also character development, not only theoretical understanding, but also practical wisdom gained through direct experience of mystery and discovery. As her understanding of these deeper principles expands, Eleanor begins to recognize similar patterns in the lives of other scholar guardians she has encountered. Each followed a unique path of preparation that developed their particular combination of talents and insights, yet all experienced the same fundamental transformation from conventional scholarship to participation in research that integrates scientific investigation with mystical insight. The diversity of backgrounds and expertise within the Scholar Guardian community reflects careful selection processes that identify individuals with complementary abilities, creating research teams capable of investigating questions that require multiple types of knowledge and insight. Eleanor's linguistic abilities complement Dr. Whitmore's astronomical expertise, while other community members contribute architectural knowledge, mathematical insights, historical perspectives, and practical skills that enhance the group's collective capacity for discovery. The collaborative nature of their work provides Eleanor with deep satisfaction that extends beyond simple intellectual achievement. She experiences the joy of participating in investigations that serve purposes larger than personal advancement, contributing to understanding that may benefit all of humanity rather than simply enhancing her own knowledge or reputation. The long winter evenings provide optimal conditions for the detailed analysis their research requires, the extended darkness creating atmospheric conditions that enhance concentration, while celestial configurations optimize access to insights that remain hidden during other seasons. Eleanor spends these months deep in collaborative work with Dr. Whitmore and their international correspondents, developing theoretical models that integrate astronomical, linguistic, and consciousness development data into comprehensive frameworks for understanding human evolutionary potential. Their progress accelerates as winter deepens, the combination of optimal working conditions and accumulated research data creating breakthroughs that exceed their most optimistic expectations. They develop mathematical formulas that predict consciousness development cycles with remarkable precision, linguistic analysis techniques that reveal previously hidden patterns in cultural evolution, and practical applications that could revolutionize approaches to education and human development. By winter's end, Eleanor and her colleagues have assembled evidence supporting conclusions that transform their understanding of human potential and the cosmic influences that affect its development. Their research suggests that the approaching astronomical conditions will create unprecedented opportunities for consciousness expansion, making advanced knowledge accessible to individuals who might never have been able to benefit from such understanding under previous cosmic conditions. The implications fill Eleanor with both excitement and trepidation. The knowledge they have developed could help humanity navigate the approaching transition successfully, supporting expanded consciousness development while avoiding the dangers that might accompany such rapid change. Yet the same knowledge could also be misused by those who might seek to control or exploit the transition for personal advantage rather than collective benefit. As spring returns to London and astronomical conditions begin shifting toward configurations that their calculations indicate will mark the beginning of the predicted transition, Eleanor prepares for her greatest challenge as a scholar guardian. The knowledge her community has preserved and developed over generations approaches the moment when it must emerge from secrecy into practical application, requiring decisions about how to share advanced understanding with a world that may not be fully prepared to receive it. The responsibility weighs heavily, yet also inspires Eleanor with purpose that transcends personal concerns. She has become keeper of knowledge that could influence the future evolution of human consciousness itself, guardian of wisdom that represents humanity's highest intellectual achievements, and bridge between the secret research of previous generations and the public applications that may transform civilization. In the circular chamber where books and instruments wait in eternal readiness to share their secrets with worthy seekers, Eleanor continues her studies with renewed dedication, knowing that every insight gained, every pattern recognized, every connection discovered contributes to humanity's preparation for whatever transformation lies ahead. The whispers of ancient wisdom blend with the promise of future possibilities, creating harmonies that echo through time like gentle lullabies sung by stars themselves. The mystery deepens rather than resolves, opening new questions while answering others, revealing that true knowledge grows not through simple accumulation, but through the kind of spiral development that mirrors the cosmic patterns governing all existence. Eleanor's journey from curious librarian to scholar guardian represents just one turn in humanity's eternal dance with wonder, one voice in the choir of seekers whose patient dedication ensures that wisdom continues flowing from generation to generation, like moonlight through coloured glass, like whispered secrets passed from heart to heart in the endless twilight between known and unknown. As the seasons continue their eternal cycle, and Eleanor's understanding deepens like roots extending through rich soil, she discovers that the scholar guardian tradition encompasses mysteries even more profound than she initially realized. The circular chamber beneath the library reveals new secrets with each passing month, its collection of books and instruments responding to cosmic influences in ways that create an ever-changing landscape of available knowledge. During the summer months when certain stellar configurations align with the chamber's hidden geometries, Eleanor gains access to texts that remain invisible at other times of year. These seasonal manuscripts contain the most advanced theoretical frameworks, developed by previous generations of scholar guardians, knowledge so sophisticated that it requires not only intellectual preparation, but also the enhanced consciousness that specific astronomical conditions can temporarily provide. The summer revelations focus particularly on what the ancient texts term the Great Convergence, a predicted alignment of cosmic forces that occurs approximately every 26,000 years, corresponding to the precession of Earth's axis through its complete cycle. According to the hidden manuscripts, humanity approaches the culmination of the current cycle, a period when the accumulated influences of stellar radiation will create unprecedented opportunities for species-wide consciousness expansion. Eleanor and Dr. Whitmore spend the long summer evenings studying these revelations, their research taking on new urgency as they realize that the transition they have been predicting may represent not simply another cyclical shift, but rather a fundamental transformation in human evolutionary development. The implications stagger their Victorian sensibilities while simultaneously inspiring them with visions of possibilities that exceed their wildest dreams. The ancient texts describe previous convergences that marked crucial transitions in human development: the emergence of language, the development of writing, the birth of philosophical thinking, the flowering of artistic expression. Each convergence brought capabilities that seemed miraculous to previous generations, yet became natural aspects of human experience for subsequent ones. The approaching convergence promises transformations equally dramatic, potentially including direct consciousness communication, enhanced intuitive perception, and expanded awareness of the interconnections between earthly existence and cosmic order. Eleanor finds herself both awed and humbled by the scope of what the scholar guardian tradition has preserved and protected. The knowledge contained in the seasonal manuscripts represents not merely theoretical speculation, but rather practical preparation guides for humanity's next evolutionary leap. Detailed instructions for navigating transformations that could reshape civilization itself. The practical applications described in these advanced texts extend far beyond educational theory into direct methods for facilitating consciousness expansion, architectural principles for creating environments that support enhanced awareness, and social organizational frameworks that could help humanity integrate expanded capabilities without losing the stability necessary for continued development. Eleanor's role in preparing for this approaching transformation expands beyond simple research into active preparation of the conditions that will optimize humanity's ability to navigate the transition successfully. She begins working with other scholar guardians to identify and prepare individuals who might serve as bridges between current human consciousness and the expanded awareness that the convergence will make possible. This preparation work requires extraordinary discretion, as the individuals being prepared cannot be fully informed about the true scope of what approaches without risking premature exposure of knowledge that could be misused if it becomes widely known before optimal conditions develop. Eleanor learns to provide guidance and training that appears to focus on conventional scholarly development, while actually preparing candidates for responsibilities they cannot yet imagine. The process reminds Eleanor of her own preparation, the gradual revelation of mysteries that allowed her consciousness to expand step by step, rather than being overwhelmed by sudden exposure to advanced knowledge. She develops deep appreciation for the wisdom of the scholar guardians who designed these preparatory systems, recognizing how carefully they balance the need for consciousness development with protection against the dangers of premature revelation. As autumn returns to London with its familiar palette of golden light and crisp air, Eleanor discovers that the approaching convergence affects not only human consciousness, but also the physical environment in subtle ways that become increasingly apparent to those trained to observe them. The quality of light during certain astronomical conditions shows enhanced properties that facilitate deeper concentration and expanded awareness, while the electromagnetic fields surrounding the library and other specially designed buildings show fluctuations that correspond to consciousness development cycles. These environmental changes suggest that the convergence represents not merely a shift in cosmic influences, but rather a fundamental realignment of the relationships between consciousness and physical reality. Eleanor's research reveals that the scholar-guardian tradition has long understood consciousness not as an emergent property of biological complexity, but rather as a fundamental aspect of cosmic structure that becomes increasingly accessible as astronomical conditions optimize the connections between individual awareness and universal patterns. The implications challenge every assumption about the nature of reality that Eleanor absorbed during her conventional Victorian education, yet the evidence supporting these conclusions becomes increasingly undeniable as her research progresses. These scholar guardians have preserved knowledge of consciousness principles that mainstream science has yet to discover, understanding that will become crucial as humanity navigates the approaching transformation. Eleanor's winter research focuses on integrating these consciousness principles with practical preparation strategies, developing methods for helping individuals recognize and develop their latent capacities for expanded awareness without overwhelming them with information they cannot yet process safely. The work requires combining advanced theoretical understanding with profound empathy for the challenges that expanded consciousness can create for individuals unprepared for such experiences. The preparation programs Eleanor develops with her colleagues emphasize gradual development through experiences that appear natural and non-threatening while actually serving to enhance consciousness capacity and stability. They create reading programs that expose participants to literature containing embedded consciousness expanding principles, architectural modifications that subtly optimize environmental conditions for awareness development, and social activities that encourage the kind of collaborative thinking necessary for navigating collective transformation. As spring approaches once again, bringing with it astronomical conditions that mark another stage in the convergence process, Eleanor realizes that her work as a scholar guardian has evolved from simple knowledge preservation into active participation in humanity's evolutionary development. The hidden chamber beneath the library has become not merely a repository of ancient wisdom, but rather a command center for coordinating humanity's preparation for its next great leap forward. The responsibility both exhilarates and humbles Eleanor, connecting her to purposes that transcend personal concerns while grounding her in the practical work of serving humanity's highest potential. She has become part of a process that spans millennia, contributing her unique gifts to a collective effort that represents the finest expression of human dedication to growth, wisdom, and service. In quiet moments, when the library settles into its peaceful nighttime rhythms and Eleanor descends into the circular chamber, where books and instruments wait in eternal readiness, she reflects on the extraordinary journey that began with simple curiosity about cipher symbols revealed by moonlight. That first night of discovery opened pathways to understanding that continue expanding with each passing season, each new revelation, each deepening connection to the cosmic patterns that govern all existence. The transformation of her consciousness from conventional scholarship to participation in humanity's evolutionary preparation represents not an abandonment of rational thought, but rather its integration with wisdom, traditions that recognize reason as one aspect of a much larger spectrum of human cognitive capacity. Eleanor has learned that the highest forms of knowledge require not only intellectual rigor, but also intuitive insight, not only analytical precision, but also synthetic understanding that perceives the connections between apparently separate phenomena. The scholar-guardian path has taught her that true wisdom lies not in accumulating information, but in developing the consciousness capacity necessary to receive and integrate knowledge that serves life's continuing evolution. Each challenge she has encountered, each mystery she has solved, each revelation she has experienced has contributed to expanding her ability to serve purposes larger than personal advancement or conventional academic achievement. As the convergence approaches and Eleanor's role in humanity's preparation intensifies, she finds deep satisfaction in knowing that her work continues traditions established by countless previous generations of dedicated seekers, while simultaneously contributing to developments that will benefit countless future generations. The circle of service remains unbroken, connecting past wisdom with future possibilities through the patient dedication of individuals who recognize knowledge as sacred trust rather than personal possession. The whispers of ancient manuscripts blend with the promise of approaching transformation, creating harmonies that echo through the circular chamber like gentle lullabies sung by time itself. Eleanor's story continues not toward dramatic conclusions, but rather through the spiral dance of deepening understanding, where each answer reveals new questions and every solution opens doors to greater mysteries that await patient exploration, by hearts wise enough to approach the unknown with wonder, courage, and the deep peace that comes from serving purposes worthy of a lifetime's devotion. That's the end of our tale tonight. Are you falling asleep beneath the golden lanterns of Luang Prabang, the midnight silence of the Alaskan wilderness, the soft tides of Seychelles, or the wind-brushed plains of Mongolia? If this story brought you stillness, like the episode, and subscribe for more gentle journeys into the dark. Let the quiet unfold around you. Let your dreams roam free. Sleep soundly now, wherever you are in this vast whispering world.